This is the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday, August 12th. We are operating virtually today thanks to the special COVID-19 rules, and our clerk has a brief statement about that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as our Chair mentioned, we are operating under COVID-19 state of emergency waivers given by the Governor. For our board members, please mute your microphones when you are not speaking. And if you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. For members of the public who are joining us via teleconference through Zoom, also please raise your hand when you would like to make a public comment during the public comment period, and we will announce you and unmute you. If you're participating by telephone only, you can hit *9 and that will alert us that you have a comment that you would like to make. Alternatively, you can email me any public comments at the email address listed on our agenda this evening. A friendly reminder that all of our action items will be by roll call votes, and any directors, if you happen to leave the meeting early, please let me know and I will reflect that in our minutes. And with that, I will turn the meeting back over to our chair.
Okay, so we're calling this meeting to order and we are going to get our roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Gibbons. Is that a here? I heard. Okay, thank you. Gibbons is present. Sinks.
Here.
Bruins.
Present.
Tyson.
Here.
I'm doing a quick look to see if Rennie has joined us yet. It does not look like he has. Montano.
Here.
Elahi.
Present.
Thank you. Abekoga.
Here.
Ellenberg.
Here.
Thank you. Absent this evening, we have Director Tovar, and currently absent are Director Rennie and Martinez Beltran.
Okay, I have it on good authority that Rob is doing battle with his computer right now, so hopefully we'll have Rob in a minute. What's that saying? He should have bought a Mac, right? Is that what we're supposed to say? Okay.
And
so
I see him, and he is on.
Perfect.
I have a Mac.
Oh, darn it. I knew he was going to hear that and we were in trouble.
It
Okay,
was an Outlook issue. It just hung. I had to restart the computer to get it to connect.
Wow. Okay, we are here. We're together. We're up to public comment on matters not on the agenda. If there's any member of the public that wishes to address the board on matters not on the agenda, please indicate your desire by raising your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, you can do that by pressing *9. And I am seeing nothing. So check with the clerk. Did we receive any written communication?
No written communication received.
Okay, next up is the consent calendar. There's many items on the consent calendar. Do we have, Javed wants to talk about consent calendar.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull 1C.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would move consent calendars item 1A, B, D, E, F, G, H, and I.
Second.
Okay, so I think that was Liz, and then Nancy seconded that. So that seemed good. Is there any other comments or questions on the consent calendar by anybody? Let me check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on any item on the consent calendar? If you wish to do so, please indicate by raising your virtual hand. And if you're on the phone, please press *9. Okay, I am seeing none. So we will check with the clerk. Did we receive any email communications on the consent calendar?
No communication received.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, then we will vote on the items we have, and then we'll take 1C.
Thank you. Chair Miller.
Aye.
Smith.
Yes.
Gibbons.
Aye.
Sinks.
Aye.
Bruins.
Aye.
Tyson.
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Montano.
Aye.
Elahi.
Yes.
Martinez Beltran.
Aye.
Abekoga.
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Consent calendar less item 1C.
Perfect. Item 1C, Javed, you pulled this item.
Yeah, I just had, I know our CEO is doing a phenomenal job, and I don't mean this to be a reflection on him, but it's generally good practice for the president and the chief executive officer or the treasurer to be two different people. It's also a safe harbor under corporate laws, and California corporation law specifically doesn't allow the president to be the chief, the financial officer at the same time. And you can be a secretary and treasurer, but not the president and CEO. Now our makeup is a little bit different. We have the joint powers agreement that we've entered into really doesn't even define that there's a president. There's a chairman who's the chairman of the board. But I would recommend we appoint somebody else as the CEO. And I know it's temporary, but I think it's just better practice to have it as two different people.
Yeah, I think we're good with our CEO. You want to appoint somebody different as the treasurer.
Right, because the treasurer is also the auditor. So I'd leave it up to the CEO to appoint, to recommend whoever he wants. And I've discussed it with our CEO and suggested that that would be the better place to go.
Who's the treasurer in your city?
Montecito?
Yeah.
I think we have a consultant working as a treasurer right now.
Yeah, and a lot of the cities like ours, the treasurer is the city manager.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this one matters given what the actual responsibilities are at this moment. Does anybody have strong feelings one way or the other?
Well, I will speak up. I agree with Javed. I think it is good practice. Our treasurer is our director of finance. So I think that could be a choice.
Okay. We have an interim director of finance. Does anybody think that's a bad answer?
But it could be, I mean, in some cities, it could be the assistant city manager or something. But
Yeah, but
here-
well, this guy is it's more than just the finance person, but I mean,
No,
we
I
can do
know.
our interim guy till we get a real guy, and then we can reappoint the real guy then. Is that okay? So it would be Don Rhodes.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. It's better to have two people on this.
Okay.
And,
Garish, is that a reasonable space to land?
Yes, it is. I would recommend that you appoint, in your motion, just say that Don Rhodes would be the treasurer until we replace him with a permanent CFO.
Yeah, and I think we have to vote it again anyway, so we just make him the guy, and eventually
That's
he
true.
won't be the guy.
Yep.
Liz raised her hand first, Nancy, so let me go Liz and then Nancy.
I actually had the same question, so I like the discussion and would be supportive of this idea for separation of the treasurer.
Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, so to clarify, the proposal that is likely to come forward in moments is that Don Rhodes would be the treasurer, but Garish would remain the auditor. Or Don would be both treasurer.
No,
and
I think the treasurer auditor has been combined, so we can leave them as one person.
Yes, it is a
Okay.
combined position.
Okay, that was Greg who chimed in. Yes, they're combined.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think it would be respectful of Don if he's on the call to just ask for his opinion as well, since he's the
Oh.
person we would appoint.
Yeah, here
Maybe
it
this
is.
is a surprise.
There is.
Surprise.
We've
what
had
do
the
you think?
conversation already.
Okay.
But Don, please opine.
Sure. Yes, happy to. It is common, as Rod said, to have the finance director also be the treasurer, especially in small organizations. The responsibilities will be fairly narrow for right now. At least it's managing the portfolio, which right now the portfolio is basically a money market, in one bank. So it's not a difficult task. And then approving some wires that are particularly large. So it wouldn't be that much of a burden. I'd be happy to do that. I was finance director and treasurer in the city of Monterey for many years, so it's a role that can work out well. Happy to do that in the interim, and then whatever you want to do ongoing would be fine.
Okay. So Javed, you pulled this item. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd move to have the treasurer auditor be Don Rhodes until
I'll second.
Yeah, it'll take care of will take care of itself, I think. So we have a motion from Javed. We have a second from Rod Sinks. I already asked for public comment on consent calendar, so we're not going back to the public at this point. So I think we're going to go just to the vote.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Sinks,
Aye.
Bruins,
Aye.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Montano,
Aye.
Elahi,
Aye.
Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Abekoga,
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Aye. Having some lighting issues.
No worries. Thank you. That motion carries with Director Tovar absent to appoint our Interim Director of Finance and Administration, Don Rhodes, to serve as our interim SVCE Board Treasurer and Auditor.
Okay, thank everybody for a good discussion on that one. We will move on to the regular calendar. First item, as is our tradition, is our CEO report. Girish.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Miller, members of the board. Just a couple of things. First, wanted to just update you that we are looking at a power prepay option, and we've updated the Finance Committee on this over the last year a couple of times. Essentially, as a CCA, we have a few opportunities to really get a structural cost advantage over our competition, and this is one where, as a public agency, we can prepay for renewable power and basically save maybe about somewhere between 5 to 10% on those power costs. We are working with 3 or 4 other CCAs to get this going. We've also updated the Finance Committee. I just wanted to give the board a heads up that we will be bringing some transactions, or at least the beginning transactions on hiring professionals to get this implemented at the September-October board meeting. Second, we are also working on something called long duration storage. As part of the integrated resource plan, the CPUC has directed us to look at long duration storage, which is storage defined as more than 8 hours in duration. We are working with 8 other CCAs to create what's known, we are calling a super JPA, so that we can work together to purchase maybe an expensive resource. At the same time, in parallel, we are also leading efforts. Monica is leading an effort to issue an RFO on long duration storage. We will be bringing you information on this in the coming months. Lastly, and maybe most importantly in my report, I'd like to introduce you to the newest member of our staff, and this is Melissa Charles, who is just on video, and in a second, she is going to introduce herself to you. She is our new Director of Policy in charge of the legislative and regulatory side. This was a new position that you approved earlier in the year. So I'm very happy to have Melissa join the team, and I'm going to hand it over to Melissa to introduce herself to the board.
Hey, Melissa, this is the tradition. No matter where you are in the organization, you always show up at our board meeting. But we're grateful to have you.
Well, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great. Yeah, so I'm very excited to be here. I just want to give you a little bit of background. It won't take too long. Prior to joining SVCE, I was with Sunrun for 2 years, just a little over 2 years, working on all California regulatory policy efforts. So I led that regulatory advocacy at Sunrun, where I interfaced with the PUC, the Energy Commission, and legislative staff as well. Prior to Sunrun, I was at the CPUC for 11.5 years, and I served a number of different roles. Most recently, I managed a team that developed and oversaw transportation electrification policies and programs, disadvantaged communities policies, clean energy R&D programs, also cap and trade policies, and a bunch of other things. It was a little bit of a grab bag of a team that did a number of different policies. And then I also managed what they call the Customer Generations Program team, which mainly focused on solar and storage, but other distributed energy resources as well. I also served as an advisor to 2 CPUC commissioners, including most recently Carla Peterman. And why I'm at SVCE is because basically I am very passionate about clean energy and also the evolving energy market, and just very fascinated with how it's changed. I've been interested in CCAs for a while now, even prior to my tenure at Sunrun. And it was why I made the leap from the government to Sunrun. And it's now why I decided to change perspectives and be at SVCE. And finally, I wanted to say I'm very excited to be here. And I'm especially excited because I actually grew up in Silicon Valley. I was raised in Palo Alto, even though I was born in the Caribbean. I've been in the United States since I was 3 years old. My parents are still in Palo Alto, and so are my sisters. My sisters are, 2 of them are on the peninsula. So I spend a lot of time down there, even with like social distancing and visits. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to meet you and happy to take any questions, but looking forward to collaborating with you in the future.
It's a rough and tumble world out there, and we are super excited to have both your breadth and your depth of experience on our team because, you know, we're out to change the world. We play to win, and we need the best people helping us. So thank you for joining us. Rod, you have some comments?
Yeah, I've been chair of the ad hoc committee on regulatory and legislative things. And I've long advocated for a more proactive stand as the movement got stronger. And I'm so glad that you're with us. And I know you're going to crush it at the PUC. We don't feel like we're winners very often, right? But I think your experience there and insights will serve us well. And I hope that you feel free to marshal this board toward whatever sort of advocacy you might find effective, either in San Francisco or Sacramento. But welcome. We are delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Then let me close by saying thank you. And I apologize in advance. This will be hard. But if you need us to make phone calls, if you need us to show up, if you need us to write letters, if you need us to, you know, all the things that elected officials do with other elected officials, we know how to do some of that. You just have to point us in the right direction. So have no fear in telling us what the right answer is, because we're just trying to get it done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, Girish, do you have anything else?
No, my report is complete.
Okay, well, I think we're coming back to you anyway. So next up, oh shoot, I totally forgot. Members of the public, is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on item 2 on the agenda, which was our CEO report? If you wish to do so, indicate by raising your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, press *9. Seeing none, double check with our clerk. Did we get any feedback?
No written correspondence received.
Okay, excellent. Now, item number 3, which is our strategic plan update, and we're going to start with Girish on this.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Andrea, if you could move to slide number 2. So this is a slide that, you know, the point of putting the slide is the SVCE board is engaged in a planning process right through the year. You know, the board has, in broad terms, you're setting direction for us, and you have a responsibility to have oversight. And you do that in several ways. And so we've established a planning process where you get to intervene and engage at various times over the year. You have opportunity to, like what we're doing today, updating the strategic plan, where you talk about priorities that are coming up either in the coming year or years to come. You evaluate the CEO, and through that, you provide direction as to the future of the organization and priorities you want the organization to follow. And then every time we talk about the budget or we are setting rates, you're also thinking about what risks and opportunities we have. And so you're looking at that. So we are in a planning process right through the year. And today we happen to be updating the strategic plan. But I just want to tell you that this will continue. This is the way we do business. And there'll be more opportunities to make changes in response to changes in the world outside us. Next slide. So I'm going to go through really quickly to the bottom line, we got a lot of input from directors, managers, the MOG. I've made a few phone calls to members of the public who do attend our meetings quite often, got some very valuable input. Next slide. And is basically, here are the major issues that were identified. You know, working in COVID times, right? So there's a lot of risk and opportunity. We basically have to make some changes. We've already started. Operations evolution. This is a big deal in the sense that we started about 3 years ago, and many of you remember in 2018, we issued our first RFO for renewable supplies. Well, those first units are coming online next summer. And over the last couple of years, you've signed 7 PPAs for a total of more than $1 billion. All those units are going to come online, which require operations. So you really need to manage those and optimize the operations of those units. And so we need to basically add resources and systems to manage that. Another thing is ad hoc systems. So as we started, we were a very small organization, fewer contracts, etc., fewer employees. Having ad hoc systems were perfectly fine to run our business. But as we become larger, as we become more complex, as we move into the operation space, if we continue with that, we're exposing ourselves to large operational risks. So we need to get into more enterprise-wide systems to manage this. Outcomes and key results. That's something that we have a constant dialogue on, but as we go into COVID times, we need to also be more clear about what outcomes and key metrics are for ourselves. Equity. You know, it's this time that we have in our country and in our state where equity has a higher profile, and that is basically how do we make sure that the most disadvantaged of our populations, whether it's low income or other disadvantaged populations, we make sure that that's a priority for us as we design various and make changes to various parts of our business. Community and customers. You know, we have a tremendous potential in terms of our customers and our elected officials. And these are basically, this potential really needs to be leveraged and taken advantage of. So there was input I've received and just in conversations that we've had, as SVCE moves forward in developing new policies, we have a decarbonization roadmap. We have an EV infrastructure plan, but we're looking at a building decarbonization plan. And as we move forward, we want to make sure that we need to leverage the power of the 70 elected officials sitting on 13 different boards. So next slide. So I just want to give you one slide, which kind of is a schematic of how to give you an example of how we are moving from planning to operations in a big way. These are the 7 different renewable power contracts worth more than $1 billion that the board has signed up for. And we're going to have our first contract come online next year. And we're going to have joint operations between us and Monterey on that. And this isn't the end, right? The state has set very aggressive goals for renewable power. And as you'll see in the next item of the integrated resource plan, depending on how the next couple of years go, we may get even more aggressive about how much renewable power comes into our portfolio. All that's going to require a lot more operations and enterprise-wide thinking to manage our risk and also take advantage of opportunities. So let's go to the next slide. You know, so what are the 5, I decided to just boil it down to like 5 different things we should be focusing on. First, as I was saying, as we get to more complexity and moving to operations, we need to add more resources into SVCE. So additional resources and efficiencies, both for the operations side and also on the regulatory and community leverage side. I'll come to that. Enterprise-wide systems. We need to move away from using spreadsheets and one-off access databases to more enterprise-wide systems with data governance policies in place. You approved a senior data engineer position. And once we hire for that position, that person will basically be in charge of data governance. I'm also asking for another position in the budget, which will be item 5 today, on a data scientist. And so that's where you can really leverage and take advantage of all the data that's available to us, but we need to have the systems in place to actually do it. Third is equity. And I talked to you about that. We need to do more on the equity side, kind of raise the profile and actually develop a roadmap and a strategic initiatives around equity. Digital pivot. Over the last year, the board has directed us to change our website from what it used to be traditionally, which had a certain purpose, to a different purpose, which we've implemented. We've done a soft launch about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We now call it the eHub, but you would know it, I think earlier we were calling it the Customer Resource Center, and that's been put in place. It's a place where customers can come to basically, whether they want to know or buy solar and energy storage, EVs, electric appliances, basically to make their future fit home. That's a place to come to. Well, it's kind of like we have a showroom fully stocked. How do you get customers to come in and actually see what we have in there? And so that's the digital pivot. We have email addresses, and in this time of COVID too, we need to reach out digitally to get customers to come in so that they can add, so they can basically lower emissions by doing the different things that the website suggests. The last point is community outreach and leverage. So this is, I think, another key area. We have 70 elected officials, and we also have some policies that we want to introduce, right? So, for example, take the REACH codes. It was a very ambitious kind of deal, and the REACH codes were focused on basically electrifying new construction. And you all know, every one of you was involved in discussions with me, with staff, with your staff, meetings in your city councils on that. Well, we're going to have a lot more on that when we look at decarbonizing the entire building stock over the next 20 years. There are lots of policies that you're going to get involved in at the local level and regional level. How do we make sure that all our elected officials have access to information, they're educated? How do we ensure that the stakeholders that are in your community that are very influential are also educated about what SVCE is doing and what we want to achieve? So that's one. The second kind of thing I think about is, how do you leverage the power of these 70 elected officials for things we may want to do in the regional space or in Sacramento? We don't actually have a presence to do that within our service territory. So that's number 5. And what I haven't budgeted or put any resources on it, but I'd like to get your feedback. So typically, if you think that that's a good idea to invest in that area, we'll probably add another position. And that position will basically not just help with the education and moving our local policies forward, but also work to leverage the power of our electeds at the regional level and in Sacramento. So that is a summary of where we are. I'd like to get your feedback, and based on your feedback, we will resource this and put it into our budget to the extent and start implementation. And to the extent that things come in front of you, you will get to see it, but we'll be reporting out on progress in all those areas. Thank you.
Excellent. So we're going to do questions, the public, and then we'll give any direction that we want. So first, does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, let's double check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on our strategic plan update? If you wish to do so, please indicate by raising your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, you can do so by pressing *9. Okay, I'm seeing none. We'll check with the clerk. Did we get any feedback?
No feedback received.
Perfect. I'll make a quick comment, and then I'm sure everybody's got a few things to say. I just like the system that we have here, which is we actually have a pretty well thought out strategic plan that drives directly the budget. And these are what we expect the CEO to do. So these are in our objectives and goals for him. And it comes back around every year where we look at how well have we done, what changes do we want to make, how do we realign the priorities of the CEO and the budget to match what we're trying to do. It's a very tight system. It's the way I think you should run all companies. My city doesn't run that way very well. We try, but it doesn't get there. So I'm just happy that this is our system. And in terms of the specifics, I think we as a board are going to eventually have to start making hard choices because we want to change the world. And everything that we want to do, we might not be able to afford to do, or we might not be staffed to do. But I think based on, we're going to do the budget next or further down this evening, we have enough to do what we want to do this year. But at some point, I think the board's probably going to have to come to reality on, I shouldn't say that. We may have to temper our strategic ambitions with the reality of cost and resources. Anyway, I'm happy with what we have. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Many should. Yvonne, why don't you go?
Thank you, Howard. Good evening. I wanted to comment on a few things. First was the enterprise-wide metrics and looking at tools. And I think it's really important that it sounds like we're gaining lots of knowledge and data, but we really don't have the capacity to evaluate that. And I think it's really important for us to understand who is converting, who is changing, why are they doing that? Is it due to they're getting reimbursements, or is it because it's economically makes sense for them, or they are passionate and believe in the climate change? And so I would like to see in that strategic plan, maybe us focus a little bit on that, because I think that that can steer us where we might need to go. The other thing is equity. Of course, I wanted to mention that, in that I've recently started working with a group of young environmentalists who are very interested in kind of climate action and bringing that forward. And I think, Howard, you made a comment that we're trying to change the world here. And if we are trying to change the world, then we sure as heck better make sure we get those youth involved with us. And so I want to make sure we're doing that, and that we are, the equity doesn't includes, what I really love about this group as well is that they are trying to engage students who maybe aren't naturally engaged because of socioeconomics or whatever, race, whatever it is, but building equity into their program. And I think that we need to do that if we really want to have the reach and the impact that I know we do. And then the last was the digital pivot. We had to talk, I think it was our mid-year that we were talking about our strategic priorities. And one of the things they were asking is, what has changed? What has really impacted you with COVID? And I have to say, again, that my husband's this complete guru, tech guru, and I certainly can and do keep up and can hold my own, but I have really pushed myself in this because we've all seen how dependent we are on it. And I think that that is something that we've got to make sure that we're a leader in. We're such a leader in so many areas, SVCE, and I think this is another area that clean energy and technology, these are some of the leading powers that are happening right now. And so I think that those two would definitely go hand in hand. And that's all of my comments. Thank you.
I would like to just give a here for that. I agree with the equity lens and the youth involvement entirely, and support everything you just said, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Perfect. A double thank you on that one. Anyone else want to say ditto or have other comments? Nancy and then Margaret.
Ditto.
Rod got his ditto, and Nancy and then Margaret.
Yeah, ditto. And I agree with the community relations and being able to marshal the, influence and power, I guess, of the elected officials. So I do endorse that strategy as well. And also very much the equity and youth focus as well. So thanks, Girish, for another, I think, much tighter strategic plan. So thanks.
Margaret?
Ditto. And I just wanted to also echo what Nancy said about community outreach. I think my experience in the last few years and doing things such as the REACH code has highlighted for me the need for us to be more visible and to reach out to like even our colleagues. Oftentimes it's, for us, I mean, I love this group and we're all, I think, aligned, but when we get to our respective cities, as much as I try to keep them informed, it's not possible to really keep them up to date on all of the ins and outs. And so, I've had some challenges at times from my own colleagues. And so I think it's important to have that ongoing conversation and dialogue with the other members of our councils as well as our city staff. And at the end of the day, the community, as much as I think our community is quite enlightened, the Silicon Valley or Santa Clara County, I have been also just surprised to see how climate change is still not prevalent as a priorities in people's minds. And I guess I've learned the urgency from my children and their friends, the next generation. And I feel like my generation, we need to, step it up and really get serious about this. And I really look to, SVCE and our staff here as the experts on this. And I would really appreciate that expertise becoming more widespread. So, and of course with equity, that's something that I'm just really appreciative, Girish, that you bring this forward. And there are other environmental groups right now being called out for not having that lens and being traditionally exclusive. And so to bring this forward proactively is I think a real commentary, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Margaret. So Margaret, then Jeannie, and then we'll do Liz, and then Javed, and then Carmen, if I can remember the order. But Jeannie's next.
So I would say start with ditto. And just to put a few finer points on a couple of things. In terms of the enterprise-wide system, I think we've gotten to that point where we do need to look at a system solution rather than a spreadsheet solution, and dealing with potential vulnerabilities and such. And so I think this is actually a really good time, and hopefully others are leading the way, and we don't have to expend too many resources in terms of trying to figure out what our options are for some of these tools and such out there. But I think it's important for us to move forward with that. The focus on equity, I mean, amen to everything that I've heard. I think as we look at rate settings and such, that's the opportunity as well to be looking at equity. I think Girish and I had a conversation already about that. But, as we've always kind of looked at how we do our rate setting, and maybe when we do it the next time around, don't you like the we, when I'm just an alternate, but when we do that, I think we need to look at being more creative in terms of what are we doing. If there's no time like the present with COVID-19 and how it has disproportionately hit members of the community and such. So I'm excited that you guys are doing that. And clearly I'm heavily steeped in the transportation arena, and their equity shapes everything that we do. And then in terms of the outreach, yeah, sometimes it's lonely at the top. And even though I have, another colleague who's sitting on this board, and I have a colleague who is the head of Peninsula Clean Energy, it's still hard. I mean, you would think 3 out of 5, but we haven't really, cracked that nut in terms of trying to get our colleagues all on board. And I'll share a story with you guys. We haven't dealt with REACH codes yet. We started down that road, and it started becoming kind of uncomfortable, and we kind of pushed it off a little bit. And as we're getting ready to move forward again, it's really sad because we need more community outreach, because Silicon Valley Clean Energy is a best kept secret, but we're getting emails at this point, which are heartbreaking to me, which are encouraging people, here's the phone number to call to opt out of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, because how dare our council members, cram this down our throat and not give us any choice, and have pulled, you guys who've been on this board for a while, that's where we started. with a lot of the public thinking that we as council members in our role were forcing something upon them. So we are kind of taking a giant step backwards, which breaks my heart because Los Altos is such a highly educated community, yet we're having a real hard time with getting people to appreciate what we're doing as an organization.
Did your city, Jeannie, advertise how many hundreds of thousands of dollars your citizens saved last year? Because the SVCE gave that data out in some other sort of PR material. Some cities put it up on their Facebook and did kind of PR-y things. Some cities did nothing. I'm saddened to hear what's happening. So
we haven't done anything like that, which again, I think, I'm supportive of us looking at, having some part of somebody's job being this community outreach and such and leveraging, because as those are the kinds of, tricks to the trade doing them. We don't have anybody who's focused on anything like this. Not at this point in time. So I think we could use some help in our community.
Yep, I feel for you guys. My guys who complained, I just kept over and over telling them how much money they saved. And that tends to quiet them down a little bit, but I digress. I agree with your points wholeheartedly.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have some of that. We also have the thing in terms of it's all dirty energy. They talk about clean energy, but it's all dirty energy at the end of the day, because, when nighttime comes, it's all dirty energy. So just not even getting some of the basics right now. And it is our most vocal group of residents.
Very unfortunate. Truth doesn't matter anymore. But truth does here. We're going to Liz next and then Carmen.
Thank you. So I will say ditto, ditto, ditto to the previous colleagues. Definitely youth and technology, equity. I appreciate the lens. We definitely need to go there. I certainly agree with Director Bruins on engaging our colleagues on councils. And this year will be important because we'll be getting a lot of new council members. So having that as a focus is going to be really important, particularly for our cities that don't have staff assigned to this topic. Education and relationships will make a huge difference. So I was very pleased with that. So overall, I think it was said earlier that tightening the strategic plan, I particularly liked the first slide from Girish about the process that we're using and how it is a process and how we do have opportunities and how we're tightening it up in a very productive way. So I thought that was great. So thank you to staff for working forward and really, I think, doing the business of what we're in business for.
Thank you, Liz. Carmen and then Javed. Carmen, you got to unmute.
Okay, so what I said was thank you, everyone, and ditto to what everyone else mentioned. Girish, you're doing an excellent job. I do like all 5 points. We are an evolving agency and we're growing, and I do like that. Girish, you have that foresight, and that I'm really impressed with that. The last bullet is the one that I think the community outreach, that one to me is, they're all important, but the last one is the most important because that's the one is going to have the multiplier effect where you educate the public and you kind of give out, spread the word out more. So I think that's the one that to me is the most important, and we should really follow through with that one first. But anyway, thank you so much. You're doing a great job. I like all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Javed and then Rod Sinks.
I appreciate everyone's comments. I think they were very well put out and summarize what Girish's roadmap is. Interestingly, today from the city of Los Altos, we had Malika Junaid, who's an architect residing in the city of Los Altos. And she presented us with her architect's buildings that she makes and designs. And she's an environmental sustainable architect, which means every house that she builds is zero. There is no energy that's coming out of it. It's all 100% green energy. So that may be somebody that Jeannie may want to get hold of. and get some support from. But I think we're all a passionate group. The board members are passionate. The staff looks like they're passionate, and we live in a time and in an area which is probably got the best chance of going green 100%. I mean, there are some areas out there where trying to go green is like trying to put on a mask. You can't do it. So we're lucky in that way. Thank you.
Yeah, I just keep telling them it's cheaper. Someday we might not be able to say that anymore, but right now we're still in the black. Rod?
Thanks. I'll just hit on the other points. So ditto on the equity piece. I think it's so important. We need everybody to participate in helping bend down the carbon curve. And for some of us, it's easier than others, right? I appreciate this map that I've seen, I guess, for the first time that shows our contracts all over the place. I really love the major issues that are laid out and identified. I really appreciate staff's thinking creatively to reconstruct this. I really do agree that if we are going to bend down the carbon curve, programs are going to be key. It's one thing when we can simply beat PG&E on rates with much cleaner electricity, but to do the other part, to bend the curve down on transportation, and to do it with further steps that we're going to need to take on building decarbonization is going to take a lot of political will, right? Imagine if we had said, okay, you need a new water heater in your existing home, it has to be electric. How would we do something like that? We've done the easier ones, and we're going to have a challenge in doing the harder ones, but these problems are oh so worthy to go attack. So thank you very much for this plan. I'm in full support.
Excellent. Okay. Everything seems like it's been said. Is there anybody else who wants to say anything? I think, Girish, we all said ditto. I think we like equity. There is a call for more deliberative action to engage the youth. And then just a general support for the whole outreach side of the effort. And as Jeannie points out, we're still taking water over the bow on the primary decision 3 years ago. Yeah. And, it's really sad, but it's not in a person's self-interest to pay more for electricity. If they think it's just as dirty and just as everything else, then why would they pay more? So it's a very peculiar world. If we can't win that battle, we're in trouble. So is there any other thoughts to this, Girish? Are you good?
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize, talk about this. This really is very co-created. There's input from all the directors, all staff, your staff at the MOG, and several of the advocates who show up at our public meetings, and they were kind enough to provide comments. So this is a distillation of all that. And it's great to see that we are aligned with where you want to take us. So we will translate this into budget, actual items that have to be delivered, and you'll be seeing more of this in the coming months and years. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so this was a discussion item. So we are good with this. So we are going to move forward. Next up is our integrated resource plan. And Monica's going to present, but Girish, were you going to introduce, or is it straight to Monica?
Straight to Monica.
Perfect. We have seen the integrated resource plan a few times before, but I think we're on this is the final lap. We're going to cross the finish line on this one now. Monica, you with us? Take it away.
I'm here. Good evening, directors, Chairman Miller. Andrea, can you switch? Yeah. So what we have in front of you tonight is a recommendation for you to approve, or that is to authorize the CEO to finalize our integrated resource plan for the period of 2021 through 2030. And included in that IRP are basically 3 portfolios. The first one being the 46 million metric ton conforming portfolio, which is going to be submitted for compliance purposes only. The 38 MMT conforming portfolio, which if you read the report is basically SVCE's preferred portfolio, and then an alternative portfolio to the 38 NMT conforming portfolio, which is offered mainly as a scenario to how we could achieve a carbon-free portfolio if we weren't able to get as much large hydro as we've been getting thus far. And so if you authorize this, so if you authorize the CEO to finalize the integrated resource plan, we will do that and then submit it to the CPUC by the deadline of September 1st. Next slide. So if you recall, I think you saw this chart last time we provided an update. California has adopted some very aggressive climate goals, which includes the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in all sectors of the economy. For starters, they set a goal to reduce emissions by 2020 back to the 1990 levels, which we've done so far successfully. And then they set a target to get to 40% 1990 levels by 2030. And then a more aggressive target most recently to get below 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. So this is for all of electricity and all of emissions associated with electricity in California. Next slide. So electricity's role in that essentially represents about 18% of the total emissions that exist today. And so that's where the 46 MMT number comes. If you take the target that's been set for 2030 and you draw a straight line down, that represents the portion that we have to reduce to by 2030 in order to achieve our share of the reductions for the whole economy. And then if you want to get to achieve the SB 100 goals, which have been set to meet by 2045, which includes basically having a carbon neutral portfolio, then the emissions that we have to reduce by 2030 drop down to 38 MMTs. So a much more aggressive scenario. Next slide. So this slide here just basically shows how much of that 46 MMT goal is coming from the different parts of the electricity sector. And so you can see here that 9% is coming from electricity generated within California, and then 6% from out of California. Next slide. So how does the state plan to get to those 2030 and then 2045 emission reductions? They do it through what's called a process called integrated resource planning. And through that IRP, they're basically looking at the whole entire state and what needs to get done between now and 2030 to ensure that we're on track to get to the reductions by 2045. So they look at all the load and they look at all the resources that exist right now and all the resources that will be coming offline, whether it's natural gas or nuclear. And then they try to come up with what they call their preferred portfolio or the reference system plan. That is what resources need to come online 2026 and 2030 in order to get to those targets. So we, in a sense, have to do the same exact thing, but we only have to do it for our load. But we have to do it within the construct of what the CPUC has put out there as far as what they think we should be pursuing. Next slide. So we started this process with you in the community almost a year ago. Back in September, we had our first workshop, and then it's followed up by a second workshop in 2019. And that first workshop that we had with you, if you recall, was really kind of to just set the stage for what we needed to do in the next year to make sure that we developed an IRP that was not only CPUC compliant, that it met whatever requirements they set forth, but that also represented what our community wanted to achieve in terms of a clean portfolio. So in that first set of workshops, we talked about goals, we talked about metrics, we talked about resources and which resource should we be considering and which one should we not be considering. And we developed these portfolios to be analyzed later on. So it was a lengthy process, but here we are today, and I guess it's not on there, but at the finish line with basically our IRP for your consideration. Next slide. So in that IRP, we have 3 portfolios that we'll be submitting again. Part of what the CPUC provides us is these greenhouse gas benchmarks that we have to hit by 2030. So under one portfolio scenario, which is the 46 MMT conforming portfolio, which is the less aggressive one, which is one that basically still has natural gas in it, they require that we hit the target. We can't be below the target, and we can't be above the target. We have to hit the target. So we constructed a portfolio that's basically conforming. And again, it's one that has natural gas in it, so it's not carbon free. So it doesn't follow the directive of the board and the community to be carbon free. The second portfolio, which is also a requirement, is that we develop a set of resource, a portfolio that get or fall below this 38 MMT benchmark of 0.562. So what we did there is we built a portfolio that mirrors what we've done so far in all of our procurement, and then fills in the gaps what we still need to do based on our load share of the CPUC's reference system plan. And so that's what that portfolio represents. We believe this is the preferred portfolio, and so we're presenting it to the CPUC as such. The only difference between what we had talked to you about in June versus what we've now talking to you about is back in June that we were told by the CPUC that we could not provide our preferred portfolio as a conforming portfolio if it fell below the benchmark. But since then, they've corrected or they've changed their position there, and we are allowed to submit a portfolio that falls below the benchmark. So it's still not zero, and that's because there's emissions in some hours because of our solar generation profile or the amount of solar that we're bringing on, but it's pretty low nonetheless. And then the last portfolio, which we're offering it as an alternative to the 38, again, one of the things that we've heard from the CPUC and through CalCCA and their efforts is that there really is going to be a challenge or a look at portfolios that are taking too much large hydro into their portfolios. There's a trend towards more and more CCAs taking large hydro as they become carbon-free themselves. And so the ability to acquire those large hydro resources have become harder and harder and more expensive. That, along with the states that we tend to import this large hydro from, that is like Oregon and Washington, are also developing their own clean goals. And so those resources will be harder and harder to get as well. And then last, we undertook a study to assess what would be the incremental distributed energy resources that we could achieve for SVCE service territory. Those are incremental to what PG&E already provides for our customers through their own efforts, or that the state believes we're going to be achieving between now and 2030 through other efforts. And the templates that were provided to us do not allow us to include incremental DERs as a resource the way that we had envisioned. So we're offering it as an alternative, and therefore this is not a non-conforming portfolio. Next slide. The last thing that is really important in this IRP exercise, if you recall, we had 3 major objectives or goals that we wanted to hit when we were evaluating portfolios. One being, what are the greenhouse gas reductions, and do we hit the target, and do we hit our policy goals? Second was affordability. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that whatever portfolio we're pursuing is one that we can sustain from a rate perspective. And then last, how does it contribute towards reliability? And this is really, really important as more and more of us are bringing on tons of solar and tons of intermittent resources such as wind. Reliability is becoming a big problem in the state, along with the phasing out of natural gas, whether it's peaker units or ones through cooling units down and along the coast, or the shutdown of Diablo Canyon. That's all producing pressure on the grid and the need to add a whole bunch of additional reliability or capacity resources between now and 2030. But we believe that we have a good story. We believe that we're doing our share in terms of meeting reliability requirements as they're defined today, and as they might be defined in the future as well. As you're aware, whenever we bring you a solar resource, we also bring you storage. And so storage helps with those grid issues by shifting the belly of the duck over to the later hours in the evening. We also brought to you 2 geothermal resources, which are considered baseload clean energy resources. That is, they produce on a 24/7 basis. So that's about as reliable as you can get. That's pretty close to being like a nuclear facility in the sense that it's on all the time. We've also recently, I think last month, if I recall, brought you a demand response resource adequacy product as a result of our resiliency RFP. We're looking, and we have been successful at bundling some of our large hydro purchases from the Northwest with resource adequacy. And so this is something that the state also cares about, since imports provide a big source of reliability, but they want to make sure that it's a source that can actually be counted. And so we're starting to structure some contracts where we're getting both, not for the price of one, but it's still a good offer. As you're aware, I think I've already touted this, but we meet all our resource adequacy requirements as they're defined in the current RA program. And then last, Garish already mentioned that we are collaborating with 8 other CCAs to pursue the possibility of forming a JPA and to acquire a long duration storage to meet not just reliability needs as we know them today, but what they might be in the future, and also hopefully to bring value to our portfolio by introducing a resource that could provide some energy value for us and a hedge. Next slide. So if you delegate the authority today to Garish to finalize the IRP and submit it, the last things we have to do is, there's some cleanup stuff in the IRP narrative that was provided as an attachment in substantially final form, but not quite final. We're still working on a few items there. We still need to complete the greenhouse calculators and the IRP resource adequacy templates. Those are just things that the CPUC requires. And then finally, we'll submit it to the CPUC on September 1st. Next slide. So just to reiterate, this is our recommendation that you give Garish the okay to finalize it and then submit it. And we will submit it with these 3 portfolios. That's all I had. Any questions?
Excellent. Okay, so we will start with questions. Then I'll go to the public, then we'll come back for discussion. And this one is an action item, so we do have to give authority to our CEO to finish and submit. So we'll start with Rod.
I basically just have comments, having gone through this in some detail. So I'll wait.
Okay, I will pick you first when we get to comments. For the members of the public who are watching, don't be shocked that there aren't a lot of questions on something this complicated. We really have been, this is like the 5th time we've seen parts of this, and it's pretty familiar at this point. So with that, let me just check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on our integrated resource plan? If you wish to do so, please indicate by raising your virtual hand. If you're on the phone, you can do so by pressing *9. Seeing none, let me check with our clerk that there was no comment.
No comments received.
No comments received. Rod, we're going to come straight back to you. I think you've been so closely involved with this. I think you can summarize this one up pretty well.
Okay, so yes, we have seen this all before. I'm in full support of us submitting this. I noted some confidential information is blocked out, and there are a couple of question marks here and there. So I know you're still refining the draft, but here's the thing for me that is really important for us to understand. Monica, I think you and your team have done an excellent job in putting this together. This is not just a technical document to submit to the CPUC, right? This is much more than that. This really tells our story. The narrative here, the arguments, the transparency we bring to the table that, frankly, the rest of PG&E wouldn't be doing this. Well, this really does lay out the case for community choice energy. You've done a brilliant job working with the team. And it's highly readable. Yes, there's technical information, and I had some questions with Girish, and I may have some follow-up questions with you. But honestly, it lays out the case for what we are doing. The wind resources we hope to add to diversify the portfolio, why we are focused on storage and long-term storage, our plans, our programs. It's so it's also obviously other members of Girish's team here, other staff members and consultants. But I just have to take a moment and really appreciate how readable this plan is, even to a board member. Okay, and how thoroughly you have effectively made the case for the great work that this organization has done. So hats off to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I add one thing quickly?
Okay, go ahead, Monica.
Sure.
I should have said this at the beginning. I do want to thank the team that helped me put this together. It was not just me. So it included Hillary Staver, who's our manager of Leg and Reg, Ian Williams, Eric Kim, Amy Bailey and her team. They did all the programs. Stuff. It was a big effort. Plus, we had the support of some really good technical consultants on this.
Yeah, somebody named Mary.
Mary Neal. Yeah, Mary Neal.
Okay.
She's with MRW, which I don't know what that's for, but yeah, MRW and Ascent Analytics did all the analysis for us, and E3 did some incremental DER potential studies for us.
So I rather suspect that in the next round, if other CCAs are paying attention, they will be taking a look at this as the gold standard in submission, IRP submission.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, Liz.
I'm glad that Rod expressed the quality of the work that was produced. I could totally share that. And I would also like to thank staff because we've been brought along. As Howard said earlier, we've been brought along with a series of presentations that I could actually understand the staff report and what the objectives were and what non-compliance was and what the 38 was and the 46 and all of that, all those pieces. And I was trying to explain it to someone else and I came up with the old thing. It's juggling, but it's juggling a bowling ball with an apple with a plank of wood. I mean, you just put so much together and it made sense. So well done. And I do think it is the gold standard.
Thank you.
Perfect. Susan?
Liz, I love that image. And I think that maybe should be our new logo, a bowling ball, a plank of wood, and an apple. Again, we're doing lots of repeating of each other's comments tonight. But what I wanted to point out is that something being readable to where did he go? To Rod is not the standard for board members. I would like to hold myself up as the better canary in the coal mine for understanding all of this. And I really did find this report to be readable, logical, followable. And in fact, I think it's something that I would like to share with our administration, even though we're doing entirely different work, for the level of transparency and clarity and ability to make such a technical story very accessible and very understandable. So really kudos, Monica, to you and to the entire team. And thank you. Thank you for making sure that teaching us is part of your job.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. Let me take it one step farther, Monica. I want to thank you and the staff for your attempt to teach the CPUC also. This plan isn't just we're doing what you asked. We're being forceful in saying we think that there's a better way. We may not be 100% right, but we're definitely not rolling over saying, yes, we're doing exactly what you said. And so I am grateful that we're trying to teach them that there's a better way. Okay, anybody else have comments? Then let me say on behalf of the board, Monica, and to the entire staff, because a lot of people's fingerprints are on this, I want to thank you for the long hours. I want to thank you for the numerous times we had to redo, rework, readjust. And I want to thank you for your clairvoyance in trying to figure out what the heck the CPUC even wants, because I'm not sure they know. And so I appreciate that we have chased that tail dutifully, and there's still a little bit more to go. And just for my fellow board members, this is one of those weird situations where as amazing as this document is, I fully expect the CPUC to find some reason to hold it up and say, this is why CCAs aren't fully meeting the measure. But we have raised the bar. So thank you, staff, and thank you, everyone. With that, I need somebody to make a motion on this item because it is an action item, and the action
I would be happy to
okay.
make that motion to approve this IRP pending any small changes by staff, and proudly submit to the world, including the PUC.
Yeah, so we're delegating that authority to Garish to make it happen.
I'll second the motion.
That was Rod for the motion and Jeannie for the second, and many other people who raised hands too, but I saw Jeannie first. So with that, we're going to call the question. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Sinks,
Aye.
Bruins,
Aye.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Montano,
Aye.
Elahi,
Definitely aye.
Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Abe-Koga,
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously with Director Tovar absent.
Okay, perfect. So next up, it's the trifecta for tonight: strategic plan, a resource plan, and now the budget for next year. And so we're going to get Garish to lead this one in, and then we'll switch to the finance director.
Yes. So Andrea is going to pull up the presentation and go to slide 2 with the top 3 items that I will talk about. And, you know, just being inspired by some of the metaphors that have been used earlier here, you know, first of all, we're doing great. These highlights is essentially we're doing great. But in order to bend the carbon curve, you know, we need to adapt to what the situation is. And essentially the strategic plan that you saw before points us in the right direction given today's situation. And the budget is basically loading up the slingshot. So it just catapults us forward so we can actually get that strategic plan done, right? So to bend the carbon curve. So it's all kind of connected. And we've been moving at a really rapid pace over the last 3 years. We want to continue to do this. I can, you know, maybe going back to Margaret's comments from before, there's a sense of urgency. And so we want to keep that going. So here are 3 points. I'm going to go in slightly, not in order. It's going to be 1, 3, and 2. First, we are in the black. I mean, that's the key thing that you should know is we are in the black in spite of lots of pressures, the PCIA and a load forecast with COVID. We are in the black. Number 3, we are in the black by changing our discount from 4% to 1%. If we keep our discount at 4%, we will be in the red in the coming year. Just amazing achievement that we all had this year was the Moody's rating. We're the 3rd CCA to get an investment grade rating. And as part of that investment grade rating, we share a lot of financial information with them, including a 5-year financial forecast. And one of the things we assumed in the forecast was in this coming year, we would have a 1% discount on our rates. So that's part of the analysis when Moody's gave us our rating. They said, we'll be looking for that. If it's not going to be 1%, that may be a reason for a downgrade. So essentially points 1 and 3, we're doing well. We're still in the black. And number 2 is it gets to kind of loading up the slingshot, right? So I talked about how we're moving from getting more into an operational mode, and we need more resources. So I'm asking for your 2 resources right now, one in Monica's group, a power analyst, and one in Amy's group, a data scientist. And this data scientist will be working with other people in Amy's group and across. That'll be basically the data piece will service the entire organization and will take part, whether it's DER, the equity lens, et cetera. That's the kind of skill set that we need. I will be coming back to you later in the year with some additional requests for resources, including staff, for example, on the community outreach side, but I'm not ready to make a recommendation on that yet. That'll probably come to you in the November or December timeframe. So with that, those are the highlights of our budget, and I want to reintroduce Don Rhodes, our Interim Director of Finance and Administration, who will be here with us for several months while we look for a new CFO. And that, by the way, that process will get kicked off tomorrow. So I'll hand it over to Don.
Not only that, Don is our new treasurer.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Girish, and happy to be here. I've met many of you already in previous committee meetings, and some of you I'm meeting tonight, all online, but very nice to meet you, and very exciting to be here with you all, even if for a short time, because what a great mission you have. So let's move on through the presentation here. If we could go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to start out just with a roadmap just to remind everybody where we've been and where we're going so it's clear. We actually started the 2021 fiscal year budget process, you could say, towards the end of June when Don Eckert gave a presentation to the exec committee at that time. He did some early looking at the assumptions and at the numbers then, so that's kind of where it started. And many of those assumptions have still held true, so are built into the presentation here that we have tonight. And then last week, we took a version of this presentation to the Finance Committee and went over the budget with them and got good input and good feedback. And so we tried our best to incorporate that into the staff report and the presentation here this evening. And then on stop number 3 on the road, that's here tonight. This is not an action item, of course, but we want to show you the same numbers and show you where we are and hopefully get your feedback and input and any changes you might want to make so that we can come back stop number 4 next month to bring the budget to the board for adoption, hopefully. Along the way, as Girish went over earlier, the strategic plan is also being looked at and would like to be adopted soon. And then down the road a little bit, but early next year, wanted to make sure to remind that we've got a mid-year budget review. So there's a lot of variables and a lot of assumptions that we'll have another chance to relook at early next calendar year in case things change. So next slide, please. You've seen this slide before, so I won't belabor it, but these are some of the categories of risk and uncertainty that face an organization like ours. So they're sprinkled throughout the budget process, and we've talked about them before, so I won't go into it too much, but they're supply, PCIA, direct access. Many of these risk issues are ones that we just need to keep in mind as we build budgets and as we build strategic plans going forward. So just wanted to give that reminder. Next slide, please. So key assumptions. So let's talk first about some of the assumptions that are underlying the numbers that we're going to be looking at here. The first one, I'm calling it trade-offs here, and that is what Girish mentioned earlier, lowering that discount to PG&E from 4% to 1%. And there's always a balance between, we want to have a good, healthy, fiscally sound organization here so we can make sure to be able to carry on our mission well into the future. So we've got to balance that with making sure we want to have as good a product and as best price a product for our customers as possible. So lowering that discount allowed us to be able to stay in the black and actually add some to the reserves, as we'll get to in a little bit. So that's the trade-off assumption there. The PCIA assumption that's built into this budget is as I think was talked about at mid-year, we're expecting a large spike this fall. We've got 50% in October built into the assumption here, dropping back by 24% in early 2021, January of 2021. So these are still guesses at this point. Matter of fact, we got some information a little bit earlier this week that it's possible that the spike, the PCIA spike, might not be October, maybe it'd be November, or maybe a little bit later. So just to be on the conservative side, we're assuming October. And then we'll adjust as necessary as what actually happens becomes known. Same with retail load. We've got built in here what we're calling an extended double dip, a larger dip that happened in the spring and in the summer with some recovery, but just to be conservative, we've built in a kind of a W dip into the fall. In fact, Andrea, could you move ahead 2 slides? I could just show that now. There, yeah. So this is kind of a W dip showing that just to be conservative, we think maybe in the fall and in the winter, in case there is another dip in the economy and load activity, we've built that in just to be a little on the conservative side. So wanted you to be aware of that in the numbers as well. If you could go back 2 slides, Andrea. And then PG&E rates, just so you know, I haven't been with this agency that long, but it's very difficult to really get a handle on what PG&E might be doing in the future with the rates. So we've assumed static. We've assumed that there is no change in the rate for the fiscal year, and of course that's why you have a mid-year review, so we can respond to that if there is a change. And then finally, bad debt. A little bit of good news here. We had planned in the budget here that that would be about 3 or 4 times our normal historical performance, which is about 0.25% bad debt expense. So we planned on about 1% in the budget, again, just to be conservative. But actually, I was looking at some numbers a little bit earlier this week about delinquent payments from our customers, and it's up about 44% from February to August. So that's a big jump, but it's nowhere near 3 or 4 times. So a little bit of good news there. Hopefully that holds. So those are some of the key assumptions that have gone into it. And if we could go to the next slide. So here's a big picture summary, financial summary. So we'll start with the energy revenues, $264 million. This has factored into it all of the load reduction that we just talked about because of COVID, the PCIA increase, and the move from 4% to 1%. That gives us $264 million. That's about, just for perspective, that's about $22 million less than what we expect to get this year. So you can see the impact that these factors have had on the retail sales. And then energy costs of $234.7 million. I've worked very appreciative of Monica and her Power Resources team, worked very closely with them over the past 4 weeks to make sure that we're in sync on what the numbers, but not only for the sales, but also the energy costs are. And so we've come up with almost $235 million. It's a little bit less than what it was last year by $4.4 million. We're well hedged into 2021. And then the difference there gives us, of course, our operating margin, just shy of $30 million. And of course, that's what we use to pay for everything that is in energy. We've got our energy sales and our energy costs. So now everything else. So that's operations, that's our personnel, our consultants, that's our PG&E fees and our data management fees and so on, as well as our programs and the capital, if there is any. And then finally, whatever's left, we're able to add to reserves, which we'll talk about. So some of those other revenues and expenditures, the next number over, that $21.3 million, that's a combination of our operating expenses, the items I just mentioned. It's actually more than 16 million. I netted in there just to save space. We have some interest income of over $1 million that nets against that. And then 5.3 million in the budget for our programs. That's the 2% of our revenues. And then finally, the math tells us that leaves us with $8.4 million to add to the reserve at the end of the fiscal year. And so I think that's a good story in itself, with all of the headwinds that we've been facing and look to face. To be able to say we're in the black and be able to add to the reserve sum, I think is a remarkable thing. And I've got a slide, a cash reserve slide, a little later in the presentation that'll show you where we are policy-wise there. Next slide, please. And next one, we went over that. So these are just a few slides. You've seen versions of these before, so I'll go through them quickly, but just your once a year or once or twice a year reminder of how things look in the big picture. About 267,000 accounts, almost 90% of them residential, as you know. However, on the sales side, as I'm sure you also know, most of that is our commercial and industrial, over 60%. And residential 37%. Next slide, please. So that also works its way. It's similar with the revenues then. Almost 60% of our revenues come from the commercial and industrial side, 39% residential, and a little bit from streetlights and ag. So that it shows a little bit of the exposure long-term to our vulnerability from direct access. Just something to always keep in mind as well. Next slide, please. And then the power supply, just to show you how that breaks out, 64% of the cost of that $234.7 million is for the energy itself, 5% for CAISO, and then the RA portion, the resource adequacy portion, always seems to get a little more expensive each year. It's 16% of the total power supply cost. Next slide, please. And then the total expenses. This is also a really good slide to remind ourselves of. Over 91 cents of every dollar that we spend is on power. That's what we do. And just to put it in perspective, the personnel portion of it, even though we're requesting 2 additional positions, as Girish mentioned earlier, the personnel portion of all the expenses together is 2.4%, just to keep it in perspective. Programs 2%, professional services 1.4%, and so on. That's a good slide to reference from time to time too. Okay, next slide, please. So just coming back to the positions, I won't belabor it because we talked about it some, but the 2 positions, the new power analyst and data scientist, it's trying to work out our current state of having long-term procurement negotiations that are very complex, and looking out for those high load customers and how to develop customized contracts for them. This takes resources moving forward. So our power analysts would help provide that analytical support. Our data scientists will help us, crunch those numbers to gain the kind of insights we need to be successful with the strategic plan that Girish laid out earlier. So this is just a little more information on the two positions that are in the budget as well. Next slide, please. And this is where they would sit in the organization, just for your reference. It would bring the total full-time staff from 29 to 31. And if you can see the little light blue boxes there are power resources analysts in the power resources group, and the data scientist over in decarb and grid innovation programs, just so you have a reference where they are in the organization. Okay, next slide, please. So we talked about the revenues and we talked about the expenses. And so this is that slide I promised on where we are with our projected reserves. So as you can see, right there in the middle, for the ending of fiscal 21, that $8.4 million would put us a little bit over the $150 million mark. So we're just a tad over that target band, that blue band in the middle, but well within the policy band ranges there. So it puts us on a good path. And then in future years, as hopefully load changes some and PCI hopefully backs off, that the reserve should go up a little bit more. So that would leave us with 219 days of cash on hand, and that's not including the line of credit as well. So that puts us in a good solid position. Next slide, please. And then just a couple of highlight slides from each of the departments, just so you have a feel for what are the important things on their plate. Many of these I'm sure you're familiar with. The strategic plan we just spent time on. In finance administration, we're always trying to stay on top of our cybersecurity issues and working towards the power prepay in order to save costs there. We've talked about, and then of course in power resources, we talked about managing long-term contracts and optimizing our portfolio. Next slide, please. And then we already talked earlier about the digital engagement and outreach pieces in our account services and community relations. Several important programs in our decarbonization and grid innovation department. And then always regulatory and legislative policy work as well. So just wanted you to have some highlights for what's important in each of those departments too. Next slide, please. So we'll end where we began. The next steps here, we're at step number 3, and we're hoping to get any kind of input, feedback. What more information could we provide here when we come back for budget adoption next month? Happy to try to answer any questions as well. So that's where we are. And I think the next slide is, thank you.
And we should thank you because a lot of work went into this. So we're going to use the same process. We'll do questions, public, and then discussion. And this is an action item, so we're going to need to approve it. So does anyone have any questions? Okay.
This will not be an action item tonight. This is only for direction to staff. It comes back for action at the next meeting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. My mistake. Thank you, Greg. Yvonne, you had some questions.
Well, I just wanted to, I noticed there was a dip when we were looking at the chart. It was on page 14, and there was a target that was in a blue band, and it dipped just now. I just wanted, was that just attributed to COVID? Was that?
You know, the whole target reserves thing is really funny because it got defined as number of days of operation. And then they translate it for the budget to be the actual dollars each year. So depending on how our revenues, you know, because our load changes, the number changes, but it's still 180 days. It's supposed to be the middle of that blue line. Don, do you have a better explanation than that?
No, that's correct. I mean, it's translating number of days of operation. The top band, you know, being 270, and the blue band being the 180. So yeah, it dipped a little bit because of COVID and the load restrictions there. But the green band is where we actually project to be, and a little bit above that 180 days, actually at 219.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent question. And it's on that slide, we should put parentheses someplace where what the low, medium, and high are, at least in days, so that people can remember how we got there.
Okay.
Excuse me. Okay, any other questions? Let me check with the public, see if there's any comments from the public. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item may indicate their desire to do so by raising their virtual hand, or if they're on the phone by pressing *9. Seeing none, we will come back. We will check with the board clerk. Any communications?
No comments received.
And we're going to start with Rob.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on the addition of the 2 additional staff. I know that our staff has really been working their butts off, and you know, I know they're enjoying it. It's the kind of thing that they like dedicating their life to, but you know, we don't want it to turn into a sweatshop either. So the two power analyst, data scientist positions will allow us to do even greater, better things, but it's also provide a little bit of relief because those things have been needed, and you know, other members in those departments have had to do it. So I think it's important to hire these 2 new positions, and even the one that Girish mentioned for later in the year, because we don't want to burn out our staff. We want them to, you know, enjoy working hard and keep working hard, but we want to give them a little bit of relief. So I just wanted to make that comment.
There's the relief factor, and I gotta say, all of our hires are very strategic, and they're always bringing in, you know, a different set of superpower skills. And so we brought in Melissa, right? She brings in a lot of horsepower that will help us further our mission. And a data analyst, you know, that's going to add. I mean, they're all just like that. We're helping the people who are here, but we're also adding much more power in different places. So I 100% agree with you, Rob. Other comments on this? Is there anything that anybody wants to change or give feedback on? Rod, you have comments?
Yeah, thank you. First, how long have you been with SVCE, Don?
4 weeks.
Okay, I'm amazed at how fluent you are with this already. This is your first CCA, right? You were in municipal
correct,
government.
yes.
Yeah, so now that you're the treasurer and responsible for everything, I have to say, every senior person we bring in, even on an interim basis, I would hope would look at what we're doing in this budgeting process, and add some senior input, right? So it's not simply turning the crank on the budget, but help us figure out how we do things better. And I'm confident that you will, if you probably have and will continue to bring in your own thoughts and ideas about the way we do this. My only objection, which is in jest, is that the W-shaped recovery has a slope of infinity at the end, and I can't subscribe to that. But other than that, this looks like a really sane recommendation on how we move forward with a responsible building of reserves. I note that if we if we execute this plan, if this is how it works out, it never quite does because all the variables change through the year, but we would be funded at about, well, over half the year, right, in reserves. We would build our reserves to over half a year's worth, and I think that's that has certainly been a long-term and worthy objective. So those are my comments. I'm supportive of the 2 staff ads. Thank you.
It is, I don't want anybody to underestimate this. If you look at what's happening with the other CCAs, I don't want to declare that we're the strongest, but we're among the strongest CCAs. And if you step back, we are delivering the clean energy that we demand of our staff. We are delivering on programs, and we're delivering programs that are actually just not Joe rebates. I mean, we have rebates too, but we're actually off changing the world with think reach codes and some of the other stuff. So in terms of everything that we want to do, we are doing it all, and we have 219 days of money in the bank. We're throwing $8 million on the pile. That's just incredible. I mean, we're the Apple of CCAs when it comes to being in the financial good side. So, okay. Anybody have other comments? Yvonne, please.
I just wanted to see if we had the change in the discount. I know that the staff has identified equity as something in our strategic plan that we're moving towards. So I'm sure they're already thinking that about possibly putting some budgeting towards that. So I don't want to steal any of their thunder, but I just would certainly encourage that we do, being that we are in a healthy place right now and that we're looking to include that in our strategy. Anything that, of course, we want to have teeth is going to need to have some funding. So hoping that we can have that happen at some point.
Yes, if I may, Chair Miller. Yeah, for sure, Yvonne, we will be aggressive in going after opportunities. And I think, we have some very thoughtful people on our staff. Yes. And, our basic pattern in all the approaches we've taken is let's come up with a kind of plan and then follow it up with programs that meet, sits within the plan. So Amy is going to be taking the lead. She has someone that she's in the process of hiring, and we're thinking about maybe half of that person's time would be devoted to developing the equity lens further. And this is just given the interest from all the board members, we'll definitely bring it back to you. And then, of course, the MOG for input. But getting to your point, we will definitely target budget dollars to make sure that our plans can become reality.
Great. I knew you would. Thank you.
And I totally forgot to mention in my summary of all the great stuff we did, right? On a dime, we did our COVID relief program. And, $10 million went to the low income people and to small businesses. And it may have been an imperfect program. We might not have super tailored it to exactly the right people, but I think we got 90% the right people. And I don't know for sure, but I think $10 million is a lot of money to put on the table to help in a situation. And I think our CCA led that. At least magnitude-wise, I think led that. I don't know if anybody.
Yes, I would say in total, 10 million. It's $3.5 million to direct relief. $1.5 million is on contractor training, a program that We're the only CCA to have done that. And one of the investor-owned utilities actually is in touch with us. They would like more information to mimic the program. And then $5 million for resiliency for each city that you could utilize to manage your PSPS events. So I think in addition to that, layering on some of what I'd say the contribution to reserves that we get by going to 1% discount, we will target it to equity.
Again, it's
all while in a pandemic.
Yeah, it's just amazing that we can move so fast and so effectively and do things that they seem logical to us because we've seen them, but people are calling us to ask us how we've done programs. The training program for contractors was brilliant. And I love that we do it all while staying in the black. What are we juggling again, Liz? Bowling balls and apples and 2x4s?
Yes.
Does anybody have any other comments on our budget? So I was corrected earlier. So this is really just direction. I think our direction is we're happy and we're a flexible board. And as you look at the objectives and the environment that's going on around us and changes are necessary, we expect we'll be back with an updated, revised plan. Does that sound fair to everybody? Okay, then we'll call that our feedback. Rish, is that good?
That's excellent. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank everybody for that one. And I want to thank staff because in some way or another, the budget touches every single person in the organization. And I know Don did work, but I also know a bunch of other people behind the scenes helped this presentation and the budget document come together. So thank you to everybody. Okay, next up is board member announcements and directions on future items. I'm seeing no hands jumping up. Hang on, things are jumping around on me. Liz, I think your hand flew by and I see Rod's hand up.
Yes, thank you. One side comment, which is we've talked about Rob Rennie, Director Rennie said that staff has been working hard and we don't want to do burnout. I think it's really important to notice that all the presentations this evening involved everybody in the organization. Some different groups took leads, but everybody was involved across, and that just shows the level of intensity and work effort that's needed for our organization. And that's to juggle. Back to my imagery. Fun thing. I'm going to be interviewed tomorrow on Stanford Radio, KZSU 90.1 FM. I think it's going to be live at 11:30, and it's called The Modern Architect, and it's a radio show and podcast, and I get to have fun. And last time I did it, which was 4 years ago, and SVCE was just beginning. So I'm going to be able to talk about all the things that have been accomplished, among other things, and how it relates to my favorite topic of architecture.
Excellent. Thank you, Liz. Rod?
Thank you. I wanted to alert you to save the date. The Bay Area Air Quality Management District will be hosting Climate Tech Marketplace. It's the afternoon of October 22nd this year. I know by then you'll be out and about and too busy to care, but we did this a few years ago with everybody at Beale Street in San Francisco, and it worked really well. So you'll see all kinds of inventions and technology to reduce our carbon footprint in trucks and cement production and all kinds of things. This year it will be virtual, so you don't even have to go to San Francisco, but save this date. I'm having Andrea send this out after the meeting. Climate Tech Marketplace 2020, October 22nd. It should be, for those of you interested in this topic, as I know all of you are, this will pique your curiosity and get your head thinking about new ways that we can go tackle our climate challenge. Thank you.
Can you send me information on my email, or I give it to staff and they can send it out?
Andrea's going to send it out to all board members after
Oh,
this.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good date, Rod. That's after we're all done printing up our fake ballots for the election. Jeannie?
So first I have a question for the chair, and that is, are you starting a new tradition where the chair comes up with a theme for their year? Because yours seems to be change the world. I'm sitting here, lost track of how many times you said that. But I like your energy. My ask is of all of you is on the ballot this November. Thank you, my dear Susan Ellenberg, Supervisor Ellenberg. But on the ballot is a 1/8 sales tax measure for Caltrain. It is measure RR for railroad. Got it? Measure RR, and watch your in trays. If you get a message from Silicon Valley Leadership Group, I think it's Vince Rocha that has been sending it out, to lend your name in support of that sales tax measure. It's time for us to put the investment we're making into electrification possible to take more cars off the road. We're talking about 2 more lanes of traffic potential here. And this gives Caltrain a dedicated source of revenue to work our magic.
And there is a nexus
Thanks,
with
Jeannie.
clean energy because they're electrifying.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we're clear, this wasn't a random election pitch. There is a nexus with who we are.
Absolutely.
And thank you for a clean measure. Thank you for a clean measure.
Clean measure, clean.
So to speak.
Yep.
Okay, any other announcements or future items for agendas? Yvonne?
I just would like to take a moment to recognize, so in case we don't see each other before, August 26th marks, of course, the 100-year celebration of the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote. And as we can see, even just looking at this board, all of the women here that I am constantly learning from and representing and leading the fight, women have been in every movement, the labor movement, the environmental movement that we see changing the world now. And so I just wanted to make sure and highlight that. Us in South County will be having, we'll be celebrating the South County Women's Equality Series, the 22nd through the 26th. I hope anybody will come down and visit us. We do have beautiful wineries as well. But we'll be doing a drive-in, a voter action day, a civic action panel, a women's story slam, and a suffrage walk. So if you're interested, the 22nd through the 26th, come and find us and celebrate with us. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hey,
excellent.
are they going to be wearing those old-fashioned dresses? On
We
that
will.
walk?
We will be dressed up as suffragists
Oh, that's going to
on
be
the
fun.
26th and doing our suffrage walk. We did it last year and we'll do it again this year.
Oh, cool.
What we did at Saratoga before the COVID was we actually got every female elected official still living in our city. And we brought them to a council meeting and we got all of the elected female leaders from all the school districts. And we put them all on stage together and the men wore yellow roses.
Yes.
Our role in it. And we let them talk about the power of women in elected positions. So it was great to see 80-year-old women and 14-year-old women all together are talking about women in leadership. So
Oh, I love it.
we did something for the ceremony. It was quite amazing to get all the leaders together like that.
That is awesome. We'll be waiting down there for all of you. And Susan, we'll be waiting for you too.
Yeah, I'll come for one of them.
Yay!
Send me the schedule of dates and events.
Yes,
I would love
I
to
will.
come down for one.
Great.
Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. You'll notice I'm wearing suffragette white here with my diversity pin.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love it.
So, yeah, I would like to announce in the same theme of the women's leadership, the League of California Cities Women's Caucus is hosting a check-in session on Friday, this coming Friday, from noon to 1:30, co-sponsored by the Soul Price Center for, I can't even read this, but anyway, it's this Friday. The special guest is Lily Cloud, who is the founder of Blue Feet, and she will be talking about executive branding strategies to help you shine. And I will forward this, but I would love for my colleagues to come and spend an hour with the Women's Caucus and learn about how to shine and achieve your potential by capturing and communicating what makes you and your work extraordinary.
I love it. Yeah, send me that information.
So I'll send it to Andrea and she can forward
Okay.
it to the group. So, and I'll be doing introductory comments as the president of the Women's Caucus. So.
Nice.
Okay, anybody else? Liz?
I just was checking the date. One of our colleague directors, Nisia, is being honored as a Tribute to Women Awards at the YWCA, and the event is before our next meeting. It's on September 10th.
Okay, excellent. Okay, any other announcements or items for future agendas? Seeing none, we have a closed session meeting. I emailed everybody at about 5 o'clock on Monday, all the related materials. I also sent it to all the alternates, so I'm hopeful that all the alternates who are attending tonight had a chance to review it too. Before we go into our closed session to discuss the evaluation of our chief executive, I need to check with the public. Is there let me describe what we're doing first. We are going to go into closed session and discuss Grish's review. That'll have two phases. First, as a group, we will discuss, then we'll invite Garish in, we'll discuss with him, and then we'll come out of closed session. If there's anything to report, we will report it out then. And then for completeness, the contract and salary, compensation, all those changes, any changes there would have to occur in a public meeting as a public agendized item. So all of that stuff will come back next meeting for a vote of the board. So tonight, closed session, 2 halves, and then we'll come back and report out to the public. So before we start, I need to check with the public. Any member of the public may speak to this item. You may do so by raising your virtual hand, and if you're on the phone, by pressing *9. And we have Bruce would like to address us.
Well, I just wanted to let you know that I haven't taken the night off.
Okay.
I haven't had comments on anything else. You know, the real question is exactly how wonderful is Garish? Is it a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 100? He's at the top of the list. And one of the great things that I really appreciate about him is what a great listener he is, and how flexible he is based on input that he receives, not just from the board of directors, but also from members of the public, and I'm sure from his own staff as well. At one time in my HP career, I was tasked with trying to figure out how HP could teach management skills to their first level managers. And after a lot of work, what our team decided was that your ability to be a good manager depends on having, at some point in your career, worked for a good manager whose behaviors you could model. That was sort of disappointing since we were told to put together a training curriculum, and working for a good manager wasn't something we knew how to make happen. But we carried on, of course, and created a training module. So I really think that one of the biggest challenges, honestly, that the board faces is making sure that you retain Garish's services for the next several years. In the Biden administration, I'm sure the Department of Energy is going to be looking for people just like Garish to come to work for the federal government. And I hope you can delay that, if not prevent it entirely. So I hope that the meeting that you have is full of patting on the back and applause and appreciation. And that is all I had to say tonight.
Thank you, Bruce. There was a treasure trove of information, and thank you for providing feedback for us on our CEO. Okay, any other member of the public that wishes to speak on this item?
So Garish, is that blushing, or did you change the color of the light on your PC?
No, I did not prompt Bruce. Bruce, I totally super appreciate that. Super surprise. It's just great. And perfect timing too. I didn't put him up to.
Okay, so no other members of the public. Let me check with our clerk. Did we get any other written feedback?
No written comments received.
Okay, Rob, not exactly within order, but go ahead. What do you have for us?
I don't think I got any email from you, as we had this problem last time. I don't seem to be on the list. At least I can't find any. Is it a Zoom meeting number or anything? I can't seem to find anything.
Yeah, I waited. I sent it at exactly 4:55. But hang on, since I have it pulled up, just thinking we might run into this.
It was from Howard. It was from Howard, not SCVE. It was from Howard.
Yeah.
And that has the contact information that we're going to go into.
We're not going anyplace. Nobody's going to move.
They're not changing the meeting, Jeannie. We're keeping the meeting, and everyone leaves is getting.
Okay,
Stay here.
That's fine. I can deal with it from there.
Yeah, so I just forwarded you all of the documents again, Rob.
Thank you.
And hopefully they will all come through within a little bit. I don't know the lag time. And I'm not sure where they're going to come from, which one of my email accounts, but I did the best I could. So process-wise, what we're going to do is they're going to make sure that myself and at least Nancy are both hosts. All of staff is going to drop off, including Garish. Greg, where's Greg? Greg is going to stay with us. We will have our discussion, and when we are ready to talk directly to Garish, I'll text them, and then we'll open back up the meeting for Garish to join, and then we'll lock the meeting again, and then we'll have our discussion. And then when we're done, we'll come out. Greg, the only issue that I run into with this is, do we need to give a time certain that we're going to come out of closed session to report out?
We do not need to do that.
Okay. So, but that will be part of our permanent record. So anybody who misses it can go back to the end of the live stream and see what we report out if they missed it real time tonight. So does that sound good for everybody?
Yeah.
So at this
I guess you're going to shut the recording off also?
Yeah, we'll stop the recording. So at this point, I'm going to ask staff to stop the recording. I'm going to ask all the attendees to drop off. Thank you for being with us. And I'm going to ask staff to drop off as well.
Howard, I'm going to drop off as well. I will trust all of you to properly evaluate and laud and support our executive director. Have a good evening.
You've had all the documents, so if there was some feedback, you would have already mailed it.
Absolutely.
We're good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, perfect. So we have just concluded a closed session evaluating the performance of our Chief Executive Officer. And in that closed session, we have nothing to report out. And so that concludes that part of the meeting. Next on our agenda is the adjournment. So at this point, we're going to call the meeting adjourned. I want to thank staff for being with us, and I want to thank all my fellow board members. Everybody have a good night.